Hey now, good afternoon from Wells Fargo Arena in beautiful, scenic Des Moines, Iowa, site of the first weekend of the NCAA tournament and the host site for now the third of 3 days of 580 Sports Talk. I'm Brendan Dworzynski. He is Dan Lucero. We are live with you from the media workroom in Des Moines, and we are happy to be bringing you coverage of KU's trip throughout the NCAA tournament on the Lewis Toyota Road to a Championship located at the intersection of I-470 and Fair Lawn in the capital city. Buy local, by Lewis Toyota, sponsoring our Road to a Championship. And man, do we have a ton of NCAA tournament to get to today. We will obviously be talking plenty of KU. We are here in Des Moines where the Jayhawks are playing. Obviously, we will preview their matchup against Arkansas coming up here in just a few moments. A historically small spread for the Jayhawks in this game. They are favored, but by a historically small margin. So we'll get to KU versus Arkansas coming up here in just a minute. Also this hour, we'll play a round of Change My Mind. And Matt Derrick is going to join us from Herman's Meat and Smoke, or our Herman's Meat and Smokehouse Chiefs insider from ChiefsDigest.com, and we will talk all about the start to the season or the start to the offseason, I should say, for the Kansas City Chiefs. That's coming up at the bottom of this hour. Also coming up today, we'll preview K-State versus Montana State. I think the spread for K-State is disrespectful. I do not think it is nearly big enough. My system tells me it should be 14-plus points. So I'm all over K-State. We're going to talk about that matchup coming up a little bit later on today. We'll also get to some audio from the podium here in Des Moines. Norm Roberts spoke to the media, as did a couple of players earlier on. We'll hear from Norm Roberts. We've got What Is Wrong With You, our 580 Sports Talk headlines, and that'll cover it on this, once again, shortened edition of 580 Sports Talk. We are off today at 5:30 because we've got coverage from Westwood 1 of the NCAA tournament. By the way, we were off yesterday early for the K-State women and the women's NIT. What a dominant win for Wichita State for the K-State women yesterday.
Yeah, it smoked Wichita State, so they get to move on. They'll play either Wyoming or our old friends Tamkika in the next round of the women's NIT.
We just cannot escape the Islanders. Don't forget you can be a part of the show on this Feel Good Friday afternoon, either on the text line 785-272-9429 or in the comment section on YouTube, our channel Sports on 580 WIBW. Comment section wide open. We'd love for you to jump in and be a part of the show today. By the way, I have to bring this up because, of course, we had to share the story we do every year during the tournament about when I was given the piece of paper, you're talking extremely loud, whatever. Our good pal Scott Chazen from the Kansas City Star dropped this where I was sitting yesterday. Of course, you're being too loud if you're watching on the YouTube stream. So nice little callback to our friends from USA Today back in Salt Lake City in 2019.
No noise complaints as of yet, but we still got one more show to get through, and so we'll see if you can hold it in the road. I have perfected my 14th tee at Augusta voice and modulation, I think, and you've done a fine job this week as well. But again, we got 2.5 more hours to get through.
Scott dropped this over my shoulder when we were watching games yesterday, and I immediately went into fight or flight mode because I thought, dang, I didn't do anything. I've been doing a great job all week. So, no, he definitely got me on that one. So, again, we are here in Des Moines at Wells Fargo Arena. Kyle Manthe is holding things down back at the 580 studios on Huntoon Hill while we are on the road, on the Lewis Toyota Road to a Championship. And, Dan, let's just jump right into it with KU. We're talking all things Jayhawks, obviously, this week as they gear up for now round 2 of the NCAA tournament. And I think when the bracket first came out, the immediate reaction was, wow, that could be an awful matchup for KU in the round of 32 if it ends up being Arkansas. I was hoping and pleading that Illinois was going to find a way to beat Arkansas because, man, I loved a potential matchup with KU versus Illinois. If there's one thing that KU has, it's toughness. It's mental toughness. It's on-the-court toughness. And I don't think Illinois has that. I don't think Illinois has that even one iota, to be completely honest with you, over the course of this season. So that would have been the dream matchup. Instead, we get an Arkansas team taking on KU that's big, super athletic, and had a ton of hype going into the year. I mean, this is a team that the last 2 years has made deep runs into the NCAA tournament. I believe they were top 10 in the preseason AP poll. Ton of hype going into the year. They started 11-1. They've gone a whopping 12-12, I believe it is, or no, 10-12 ever since that point. So they really struggled in SEC play, but they've got the size, they've got that athleticism, and that's something that KU talked about immediately today on the podium. Kevin McCullough talked about it, Joe Yesufu talked about it, Norm Roberts talked about it, and I mean, that's the kind of team that's given KU problems over the course of this year. You think about Texas, you think about some of these other teams in the Big 12 that just have athletes all over the place. In the past, Baylor, even in recent years, that has been a struggle for KU. KU can win this game. They're favored. A lot of the money is being put on KU. That's how it should be. But this is about the worst 1 versus 8 matchup KU could have possibly thought of getting.
Yeah, the Arkansas ceiling much higher than an 8. They proved that out in Maui when they beat San Diego State in the third place game, played Creighton to the hilt that weekend. They looked like one of the best teams in the country early on. And they've dealt with some injuries, and they've had a couple of fallow periods that have coincided with injuries, particularly to Nick Smith, their standout freshman, who KU also recruited heavily and would have loved to have had in a Jayhawk uniform. But, yeah, talent-wise, athletically, this is as good an 8 seed as you're going to see. And they put some of that athleticism on display last night when they just suffocated Illinois defensively, held the Illini to 39% shooting and 6 of 22 from behind the arc. I've never seen game notes that have this bit of information. Before I pulled the Arkansas game notes today, they've got every player's wingspan and standing reach and max vertical. And I don't think you put that in your game notes if the point is not to say, we got some freaks, we got some dudes, we got some condors, we got some absolute genetic freaks on this basketball team. And
Steiners.
Yes, and they certainly do. They have 6 guys on the roster with a wingspan over 7 feet. The average wingspan on this team
I have
is
never
6'9".
seen that before.
Yeah, that's brand.
Actually got wingspans.
Yeah,
in there.
that's brand new to me. They got a handful of these guys are going to play at the next level in the NBA. There's no doubt about it. And that's why when I really first started thinking about this matchup, and KU fans won't want to hear this, but the first thing I thought about, I went back to 2021. I went back to that first round matchup against USC, and I thought about how that USC team, they weren't a great outside shooting team, and this Arkansas team is not a great outside shooting team, but they had 2 NBA guys and 3 future draft picks, or at least 3 top 100 recruits on that team, and were just bouncy and athletic and long, and they were more athletic than KU was by a lot, and they were longer than that KU team was by a lot. Now, that KU team, and they were a 4 seed, and obviously they weren't as good as this year's Kansas team. But it's the matchup I thought of immediately, a team that was just able to completely overwhelm Kansas with their athleticism that night. And, of course, it helped, if you remember back to that 34-point loss for Kansas in the second round at Hinkle Fieldhouse in 2021. It helped that USC had a very out-of-character three-point shooting day. They were 11 of 18 from behind the arc, and when an athletic team shoots it like that, cancel Christmas. I don't know that Arkansas has a shooting performance like that in them, and frankly, that's not really their style. They only shot 11 threes yesterday. It's a really low number for a college basketball game in 2023. That's not how Arkansas is going to beat you. They're happy to score around the rim. They've got good mid-range jump shooters. But that was the first thing I thought about was that USC matchup. And athletically, it feels very similar. That's not to say this is an unwinnable game for Kansas, but it is easy to see when you look at the two teams on paper why Kansas has the shortest line in their favor as a 1 seed in the second round since Purdue in 1996. Purdue was a 2.5-point favorite over Georgia that year, and they lost. The Bear, Chris Valica from Fox Sports, had this on Twitter earlier today. So Kansas is only a 3.5-point favorite. So it has been, doing back to the napkin math, 17 years? Longer than that. 27 years.
27 years.
27 years since there was a number 1 seed that was this short a favorite in the first round. In fact, it's just the 6th time that a 1 seed has been favored by 4 points or fewer in the second round. Just the 6th time. Previous occasions, those 1 seeds that are short favorites are 2 and 3. And only one of those, Mizzou in 1994 against Wisconsin, covered the short spread. Ohio State beating Georgia Tech in 1991 was the other. So, bit of a historical anomaly here. KU being, or as a number 1 seed, this short a favorite against an 8 seed. And I think some of that has to do with the athleticism advantage that I think everybody would agree that Arkansas has in this game.
Yeah.
I wonder how much of the other factor is the question about whether Bill Self will be on the Kansas sideline. And I loved what Norm Roberts said on the podium today, because I think we assume that, man, without Bill Self on the sideline, it's just different. It's a different Kansas team without Bill Self on the sideline. Norm Roberts on the podium today, and we're going to hear from Norm a little bit later on in the program. We're going to bring you that audio on the show. He said, I've been working with Bill Self for 25 years. We finish each other's sentences at this point.
Mhm.
Like, there's not too much difference in the way the game is going to be managed necessarily. So I'm a little surprised. Like, again, this is not a knock on Arkansas, who I think is, again, way too good to be an 8 seed.
Agreed.
But it is surprising still that the line is this short for a 1 seed, and the history kind of backs that up.
I think one thought both on the matchup comparison and on Self, and I think this is the first time when you really think, God, you got to have Bill Self out there. Because going into the Big 12 tournament, I didn't really think that tournament meant anything. Now, apparently it did, because KU got housed by Texas, and I guess that completely skewed how the committee viewed things. But, you can beat TCU, or you can beat Texas Tech, or whoever you end up getting matched up with, whatever the opponents ended up being. You can beat those teams with Norm Roberts coaching, because you've got the game plan. The players know what they're doing. This is a very veteran team. Jalen Wilson's been around Bill Self forever. McCullough only for a year now, but he's played in these big games before. Harris has been around for forever. You've got the guys who have that experience who can essentially coach on the court for you. This is a matchup, though, where I think you want the expertise in knowing when to push the right buttons and knowing when to pull the right strings, because that's what Self is better at doing than anyone. Maybe out of timeout plays and scoring right off them, he's the best at. But, knowing when to execute certain things, knowing when to execute certain parts of the game plan, or going deep into the playbook to open something up, knowing when to go from switching everything to manning up across the board, or vice versa in this game. This might be the kind of contest against Arkansas where you do need to switch everything. If for no other reason, you've got to try to even out and, save your guys, because let's be honest, you're not expecting a whole lot from the bench unit coming up in this game. I think you're probably going to have to rely on your top 5, your starting 5, for the vast majority of this contest. So I think that is where the difference comes in. In terms of executing the game plan, knowing when we want to try this, if you see this, go to this instead. I think Norm Roberts can handle all of that. To me, the difference maker is Bill Self is the guy who is so freaking good at knowing when to push which specific button, knowing when to go to which guy, how to put them in certain situations, when to go from that, man up to switch everything, whatever it ends up being. So that would be the number one concern with me. As for the comparison to that USC game, I think it makes a lot of sense because, again, it's super athletic versus team that's lacking in some sort of athleticism. And the other thing, too, this KU team isn't bad at shooting the 3, and they're willing to take it. Grady Dick, we know, is a willing shooter. Jalen Wilson is a willing shooter most of the time. Dwan Harris can be. You get McCullough in the corner, he can be. We know Joseph Yesufu's not afraid to shoot 3-pointers.
No, he's not.
Not even one iota. That KU team in 2021, not good at shooting. I mean, what did Self say in the postgame after that game when they lost to USC? We've got to get more athletic. We've got to get better shooting. And there was one other two, but those were the two that really stood out. And they went out and added Jalen Coleman-Lands the next year. Like, there's no better, we need to add a shooter than adding a guy like that. This year's KU team is better at shooting than that, but they still have that issue where the opponent is just so overwhelmingly athletic. Now, I do think what brings these two teams closer together in this matchup than those teams were 2021 Kansas, 2021 USC were in their matchup, Arkansas does not have an Evan Mobley. They do not have a guy quite like that, a guy who has had a actually decent start to his NBA career. He was a Rookie of the Year candidate a year ago, in fact.
Yeah.
He was a freak. He was different. He was a true dude. And Arkansas's got all these great athletes, their wingspan and everything.
And future pros.
Nick
Smith probably going to be a lottery pick. And they've got guys who are going to play in the NBA for sure. But, maybe not a Evan Mobley. I think number 3
overall. Yeah. I believe it was number 2 overall. Yeah. Aliens. Like, there's really good athletes, really good prospects, and then there's aliens. And I think Mobley is in that latter category. And this KU team is just better than that team was in 2021 as well. You've got a more complete Dwan Harris. Jalen Wilson is a better player than he was. Kevin McCullough is one of the best defensive players in the country. But you've got a really solid core that I think is better than a core that was pretty tenuous back in 2021. So I think it is a closer matchup, certainly, than that one was. Because, let's go back to that year. I think everyone kind of knew KU was on borrowed time in that tournament. It was already a weird year. They weren't playing especially well going into March. We knew it was not going to be for long. Hope you get to the Sweet 16, but hey, not really surprised they lost to that USC team.
Yeah, big difference going into the tournament as a 4 seed, going into it as a 1 seed.
For sure. Now, again, granted, like you pointed out, this is the toughest 8 seed I think there is. I think Arkansas is better than Memphis. I think Arkansas is better than, and I don't even remember who our other 8 seeds are. A couple of them are in action today.
Yeah, Memphis is an 8. Forget who the other 8
Who played yesterday? Iowa.
Yeah, Iowa was an 8. They got beat. They had to play on the road.
Yeah, they play in Birmingham against Auburn.
Wasn't awesome. And then, who's playing Houston?
Oh, it's
Oh, that's
Auburn.
Auburn.
Yeah.
Who's playing
Now I gotta look
Alabama?
at the bracket right now. But the point remains, one way or the other, that this is the toughest 8 seed, and it is the toughest possible matchup in this round for KU. I think the difference is going to be the toughness of this KU, because that's the other thing about 2021. That team was not tough. That team was not tough in the way that this team is. They're grizzled vets at this point.
They didn't have a Jalen Wilson to kind of grab them by the scruff of the neck.
No.
And I think that's a difference. And like you said, the shooting is different as well. They didn't have a
Maryland.
They didn't have a Grady Dick. Yeah, that's right. Maryland over West Virginia. That's right. Iowa State is on a 17-4 run and are back within 7 of Pitt as we check in on some other NCAA tournament action. Speaking of Big 12 teams in the tournament, Baylor dominated and won earlier today, so that was a good showing for another Big 12 high seed. Texas cruised last night over Colgate, and so Kansas will try and make the Sweet 16 tomorrow against a team that this is not going to be an easy game. It'll be you're here for a 40-minute dogfight. And Arkansas, specifically, their players at the podium talked about they think they can affect Kansas's guards and really pressure them 94 feet and play, real physical, full court defense. And I've said it probably so many times it starts to sound like a broken record. DeJuan Harris is the barometer. If he plays a good game, Kansas usually wins. If he plays a great game, Kansas always wins. But you can force him into mistakes and uncertainty, and he doesn't play with confidence, and he doesn't shoot the ball effectively or willingly, then that's how you beat KU. I think that's going to be the route to victory for Arkansas. Is you try and get DeJuan Harris out of rhythm, make them run their offense late in the shot clock, but at the same time, again, with respect to Arkansas's athletes, because they've got terrific athletes that and obviously some impressive enough wingspans to get into the game notes in that full court. But Kansas has seen full court defense this year. They've seen TCU play it on them. They've seen Iowa State throw it at them. Yep. They've seen West Virginia throw it at them. So I don't think they're going to see anything necessarily brand new. The challenge, again, is the athleticism and is the urgency that everybody plays with when you get to this time of year.
Really quickly, before we get to a break here, I want to ask you something that was asked to Ricky Council, former Wichita State Shocker, now obviously with Arkansas, something that he was asked in the locker room today. He was asked what makes Kansas tough. What makes them a tough team to match up against? Generally speaking, not just for this matchup against Arkansas, but just in general. If you were said, what is the one thing that makes Kansas a tough matchup, what is it?
The thing that makes Kansas a tough match, if there's one thing.
He went with togetherness. And he said, even Bill Self said this is the most connected team they've had. Not their most talented, but their most connected.
It's a really, really thoughtful answer from an opposing player. I would probably have to say that they have a lot of different ways that they can beat you, but they also have the one guy that can get a bucket when you need to get a bucket. So a bit of a nod to Ricky Council's answer that they do. They share the ball, and that some nights it's the pick and roll that's really working. Some nights it's running Grady Dick off of screens. But the thing that's always seems to be there is if you absolutely need a basket, you find Jalen Wilson. He goes to get you a bucket. So I think it's a combination of those two factors. It's the togetherness on offense, and it's having a matchup problem, a bucket getter, a guy who can get to the rim or finish in the pull-up or hit a three, a first-team All-American kind of player like Jalen Wilson. That's what I think makes him a tough matchup.
I'd say calmness, to be completely honest with you. Like yesterday, and I know Howard is a different level of competition. I understand that. Howard was playing out of their minds yesterday in the first half. They were leading. They were up 32-31 or 31-30 in the first half. Didn't face KU one bit. Kept running their stuff. Run through DeJuan Harris, get the ball to Jalen Wilson to score. By the end of the half, they were up by 13. They end up blowing them out in the contest. Nothing seems to faze them. Even when they don't play well, this team doesn't panic. They don't freak out. They don't, get pinned in the corner, then blindly throw the ball to the center of the court in a do-or-die game that might end your season. No one on this team is going to end up doing that. You're not going to see DeJuan Harris make a play like that. So I think the fact that KU is calm. They're able to adjust situation to situation. They can change defensively. They can go full chameleon in that regard. I think that is what makes them toughest for this matchup. And I think that's what's made them the toughest over the course of the season. Look at some of these games they came back in. Look at the Baylor game. Look at some of those games early in Big 12 play. When you look at the first Oklahoma game, the first Oklahoma State game, it was because KU just doesn't get rattled by things that I think they were able to hold on. And I think that's still present coming into this matchup as well. We'll hear, as Dan said, from Norm Roberts coming up a little bit later on in the show today. Later on this hour, we'll also talk to Matt Derrick for our Herman's Meat and Smokehouse Chiefs Insider. Right now, though, we have to get to a break. We've got a quick round of Change My Mind coming up after this word from Dan.
Yes, I want to let the good people listening know that this March, you can protect yourself against upsets with bracket parlay insurance if you play on FanDuel Sportsbook. Right now, all customers can get up to $25 back each day if your parlay of 3 legs or more falls 1 leg short. For example, if you wanted to bet a spread and a total and maybe a first half number or maybe a player's total points, you could parlay all of that, and if it's a 3 or more leg parlay and you miss on one, you get your bet back up to $25. With a parlay, you can turn a small bet into a slam dunk, and with cash out, you're calling the shots. You can close out your bet whenever you want before the game is over. Just sign in to FanDuel or go to FanDuel.com/Lucero to sign up today. That's FanDuel.com/LUCERO. Make every moment more with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Must be 21 and present in Kansas. Bonus issued is non-withdrawable bonus bets. It expires 7 days after receipt. Max bonus bet $25 per day unless otherwise specified. Restrictions apply. See full terms at FanDuel.com/sportsbook. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino, LLC. Gambling problem? Getting help is your best bet. Call 1-800-522-4700 or visit ksgamblinghelp.com.
Change My Mind is next on 580 Sports. back on 580 Sports Talk. Brendan Dworzinski, Dan Lucero here with you on this Feel Good Friday afternoon. Matt Derrick of ChiefsDigest.com is going to join us coming up here in just a few minutes. Dan, my change my mind for today takes us to, unsurprisingly, the NCAA tournament. Baylor won earlier today. They took down your beloved UC Santa Barbara Gauchos.
My poor Chos.
They played tough for quite a bit of the game. You got to give them credit for that at the very least. Baylor still can't guard anybody. And really,
they guarded the hell out of the Chos today, I'll tell you what.
See, was it guarding more, or was it just that UC Santa Barbara couldn't make shots? Because my change my mind is Baylor's done this weekend. They are out on Sunday.
I felt that way anyway. So I'm not inclined to disagree with you, honestly. I felt like they were probably toast even after a win over UCSB, because I think Creighton's going to give them a lot of problems. I think Creighton's the kind of team that can score and has good enough guards that it won't be a massive advantage for Baylor at the guard spot like it is against a lot of teams. And I do. I agree with you. I think Baylor goes home. I just don't think they're a good enough defensive team. Although if they did really truly turn over a new leaf on defense this week or today there in Denver, then that could really change the equation. If this team with those guards and that ability to shoot starts playing defense like a Scott Drew team typically does, look out. They
will get the winner of Creighton, North Carolina State coming up on Sunday.
Yeah, I guess I shouldn't assume that Creighton's going to beat North Carolina State. That's a tough 6-11 matchup. And North Carolina State's got Terquavian Smith and Jarkel Joyner. They're good enough to win that game.
Yeah, they certainly are. Creighton's up right now by 2. That game is just past the 4-minute under 4-minute media timeout in the first half. I think Creighton gets Baylor. I've got Creighton going all the way to the Elite Eight for what it's worth, but my bracket is absolute dumpster douche trash. So
yours is?
Yeah, it's bad. Well, then again, I also did not have Arizona winning the national championship. So
yeah, who would have done such a thing? Who would have made an idiotic pick like that?
Hey, it happens sometimes.
All right.
As someone having picked KU every single year since I was, 13 years old, sometimes you run into those mistakes as well. So I've been there before.
Fair enough. All right. For my change my mind today, the team that looked the most like a national champion on day one of the NCAA tournament was the Duke Blue Devils.
Man, that's a good question. That is a really good one. I would say if we're just going based on the eye test, if we're just saying purely who dominated the most relative to quality of competition, I would say, yeah, it's probably Duke. But I think you could argue against that if you want to go a little bit deeper than just the eye test or just the simple box score. According to Shot Quality, who I think does really good work, and they essentially base, who actually won the game, the percentage of open shots, where they shot it from, guarded shots, etc. They said that based on the shots that the two teams respectively took, they would have given Oral Roberts a 45% chance to win that game. They put it 100 times. They said Oral Roberts would have won 45 of them. They just could not make a thing. Tough to win when your All-America caliber player on a mid-major team has the worst game maybe of his entire career. Max Abmas stunk yesterday, which is tough because he's been such a good player for so long. So I'm not ready to crown Duke yet. Maybe that's me using my own confirmation bias because I thought they maybe had a chance to get upset yesterday and they ended up not. But if you're just basing it on truly if you're talking who's the biggest bust team here, they get off the bus and you say, oh my God, the team that just popped off the page the most, probably is Duke. I'm not sure who else would take that title.
I'll tell you.
I don't know.
Arkansas is a pretty good off the bus team.
That's true. They certainly are.
I don't remember who it was that came over to you. It might have been our pal Michael Swain. Might have been our guy on Wednesday. We were here saying, Arkansas just got off the bus. They're huge.
Yeah, I think so.
They're gigantic. So
well, I think we're seeing Michael right now. I think he said they all look like Ernest Uday. It's a whole team of Udays. Yeah, that's going to be tough, man.
Yeah, it is.
Just to prepare, we'll be working. Obviously, I'm going to be shaking back and forth and just kind of shaking in general. That's just kind of how these things go. No, you've seen it before.
Yes, I have. I do think Duke probably had the most impressive, given the quality of opponent, given how many people thought that might be a trap for a 5th-seeded Duke team. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're no 5 seed, man. They got everybody healthy. They've got their own big guys back now, like Derek Lively and Derek Whitehead are fully activated to go along with Kyle Filipowski and Jeremy Roach playing at a really high level. They're my pick to get out of that region, and I feel even better about it after seeing them just they just stomped all over Oral Roberts and killed their hopes and dreams right off the rip. First 5 minutes, that game was over.
You know who didn't look like a national champion yesterday? Houston. Oh, boy.
Boy, they got some problems, man.
Yeah, they do.
Marcus Sasser, it's hard to imagine he plays tomorrow. Jamal Shedd now is limping around with a knee injury. Those are their lead guards. Like, if they don't have those two guys, they were very unconvincing in putting away Northern Kentucky yesterday, and they're going to be playing a road game against the Auburn Tigers tomorrow. And you can still win it. Jerish Walker is an awesome player. They play hard. They're well coached. They rebound like crazy. But, Houston to the Final Four feels a lot less certain than anybody might have felt about that going into the tournament.
We'll talk more tournament coming up in just a little bit. Right now, though, we've got to get to a break. Matt Derrick joins us next here on 580 Sports Talk. We are headed to Kansas City, where it is time for, on this Friday afternoon, our Herman's Meat and Smokehouse Chiefs Insider with the one and only Matt Derrick from ChiefsDigest.com. You can find him on social media at Matt Derrick on Twitter, and of course, go to ChiefsDigest.com for all the best coverage of all things Kansas City Chiefs. And Matt, we do have a ton on the Chiefs to get to, including some breaking news, according to Jordan Schultz of The Score just a moment ago. But first things first, I've got to ask you about your alma mater. First NCAA tournament win for your beloved Missouri Tigers in over a decade, Matt. How are you feeling? How are the vibes in Kansas City right now as you gear up for a pretty favorable second-round matchup, too, against Princeton?
Yeah, that's just enough to get you excited with a 7 versus a 15. You think that's a pretty good advantage, and at least the Tigers are going to win that matchup. But, yeah, I mean, hey, you know what? It's been a long time since Mizzou has gotten a tournament win. So finally breaking the ice feels good, but in the second round, it's almost but for Mizzou fan, it's a lose-lose. If you win, it's as expected, but if you lose, you lost to a 15 again. I mean, we can't have nice things, and we're never confident. So you just take it as it goes, and just always wait for the other shoe to drop.
I have noticed that about Mizzou fans, not always the most optimistic always, but even from a KU grad, I'm going to give you this, Matt. I truly think you could beat, 16 seeds on the way, and there's only 4, but you know what I mean, on the way to a national championship. It counts all the same. It's the toughest tournament in sports, and I hope that if Mizzou is able to end up winning tomorrow, you're able to at least celebrate a little bit this weekend. Sweet 16, all bets are off, but best of luck. I will be as polite as I can be to the rival Tigers coming up tomorrow.
I greatly appreciate it. I'll do it as a true Mizzou fan. I fully expect that there's a level of confidence that is like, we can make it all the way. We can make it to the Elite Eight, and then we will probably lose by 30 to a completely unlikable Alabama team. It's the way things roll.
Hey, that's how it breaks sometimes. But we do have plenty of Kansas City Chiefs we have to get to today, and we'll get to the breaking news here in just a second. But I've got to ask you about the biggest offensive line signing for the Chiefs. Obviously, that means bringing back Nick Allegretti. No, it's signing Jawaan Taylor earlier this week when free agency opened up. Moving from right tackle with the Jaguars, he's going to be the left tackle for the Kansas City Chiefs. Pretty darn hefty contract the Chiefs are passing out to their new left tackle as well. Just overall, what'd you make of the move when the news broke, and how do you think Taylor fits in with this Chiefs team?
Yeah, it was kind of an off-the-board signing. I mean, from people I talked to and what I certainly expected, it wasn't necessarily on the radar because, he has played right tackle for the last 4 years, and you certainly got the sense the Chiefs were going to be more in the market for a left tackle. But you look at their thought process, and it makes a ton of sense. I mean, you're able to get Taylor for what looks like a big contract, and it is. I mean, it's the 4th highest paid contract right now for a tackle, for an offensive lineman. But if he plays to the expectations that Chiefs have, he's going to be a bargain down the road. I mean, it's not going to be long before $20 million for a left tackle is just the going rate. And there's going to be a lot of people that pass that by. But you look at how his progression has been. Certainly, you look at last year how he performed in Doug Peterson's offense, and you get it. I mean, he certainly has all of the skill set. He's got the attributes to play left tackle. From the film, you look at it, and it makes sense that he could make that transition pretty easily. From what we got to talk to him yesterday, I think, clearly has the right mindset and mentality. But the one thing the Chiefs are buying with is his versatility. He can play left tackle. He could be the right tackle for this team during this contract, too, if they get the opportunity to land, what they think is a franchise foundation on the left side, whether that's through free agency or trade or even the draft. So he does give you a ton of flexibility. He can play, they feel like, comfortably both spots. And honestly, I mean, if he plays on the left side as well as he did on the right last year, he's going to be a premier left tackle. And this could end up being a very savvy transaction for the Chiefs if it works out the way they expect.
Do you think he's a better player than Orlando Brown?
I think he's a different player, and for sure. And that's probably one of the attractions. I mean, I don't know that Orlando was necessarily a square peg in a round hole, but I don't think there's any doubt he's a good tackle. And there's probably debate around the league about whether he's a better left tackle or a right tackle. But I don't know if he was completely suited for the offense. And, and the Chiefs at least one point felt like he was because they were ready to pay him like that. But I think this past season probably convinced him a little bit that maybe he just wasn't the right fit for the team. We've seen some other teams, it looks like, have, begged off on Orlando because maybe they felt the same way. And some teams that have a quarterback that can move around the pocket a little bit. Yeah, I mean, I think they're different. But then again, I mean, you look at the metrics and you look at how, frankly, Jawaan Taylor performed in a very similar offensive scheme last year in Jacksonville. And I think you'd say he was a better performer last year as far as the numbers go. So better or worse is subjective, but a better fit, that might be what Chiefs see in Jawaan.
Our guest is Matt Derrick of ChiefsDigest.com, our Chiefs insider here on 580 Sports Talk. He joins us every Friday at this time to talk all things Chiefs. You can find him on Twitter at Matt Derrick. Matt, the Chiefs within the last hour have reportedly made a transaction, reportedly coming to terms on a one-year deal with former Chargers linebacker Drue Tranquill. And I think the first question that comes to mind with this particular transaction is why a linebacker? Why did they prioritize that position in free agency, and why this player in particular? What's a good fit about Drew Tranquill with the Chiefs?
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly going to be interested in the numbers on that, because you would look at it and say to yourself that the Chiefs feel pretty set. I mean, you feel pretty good about them as far as, their base offense with the linebackers that they have. Certainly with, Nick Bolton, I mean, that's a mainstay. Hey, Willie Gay is entering in his last year of free agency, so you have to be looking at either whether you're going to lock him up long term, or somebody that you're willing to let walk next year. And Leo Chanel's obviously, feel like is an ascending player. And they're all a little bit different flavors, but I think they fit their roles pretty well. The thing with Tranquill, I mean, one thing the Chiefs have kind of lacked in the last few years has been depth at linebacker. Tranquill would be a guy that absolutely fills that. Their fourth linebacker really the last couple of years has been a guy like Darius Harris, who has been a nice piece, and his best compliment, would you say, was just that he is capable of playing all the positions. Tranquill, I think obviously he's a step up. I mean, you're certainly picking up something with him. Maybe not have the versatility of Harris, but he's definitely somebody that you feel like that if you needed to start him the first stretch, you wouldn't have a huge drop off. So I would think at first glance that's got to be a little bit of what their thought process is just trying to deepen the bench. There should deepen their bench and special teams a little bit too. You got some options there, but the last couple of years when the Chiefs have had some injuries, that has been a spot that teams have attacked. So I feel like if it strengthens their depth, that's probably a good move.
Another move the Chiefs announced earlier this week, or that was reported earlier this week anyway, I should be more precise with the wording, but it looks like Tershawn Wharton is going to return to the team on a one-year deal. Turk was starting to see a lot of the field, played 66% of the snaps for the Chiefs in week 4 against Tampa Bay, then tore his ACL in week 5. By all accounts, should be ready to go for training camp. Do you believe the Chiefs view Tershawn Wharton as a starter next to Chris Jones at defensive tackle?
Yeah, I think it remains to be seen. That's one thing, is that they don't want to put a lot of pressure on him as far as, coming in and that being the expectation coming off of the injury. But they certainly want him to be able to be a rotational piece. And you feel like certainly based on what he was doing before the injury, that's not going to be a problem. I did get a chance to talk to Turk kind of late in the season about how he was doing and about his rehab, and he was feeling good. He was ahead of schedule. So my expectation is that, he may very well be on the field for OTAs. And if he's not on the field for that, then he certainly looks like he's going to be a full go for training camp. So he shouldn't be too far behind. That injury was back in week 6, I think. So he's going to have a close to 10, 11 months of recovery. And with ACLs nowadays, that's enough time. So whether he'll be 100% this year with knees, it's always a questionable. But you feel like he should be at least in a very good spot to be able to compete for a starting spot, if not just be a complimentary piece that like he's been the last couple of years.
We know the couple of Chiefs who will not be returning to the team in 2023. Colin Saunders heading to the Saints. Juan Thornhill is going to Cleveland with the Browns. Juju Smith-Schuster will not return. He has agreed to a 3-year deal with the Patriots. That might be the biggest surprise, certainly, of those 3 names, as now it leaves the Chiefs without their leading pass catcher at wide receiver from last year. What is the likeliest path now at this point, Matt, for the Chiefs to add at wide receiver? Free agency, a trade, or through the draft?
Honestly, I think you're talking about all of the above, possibly. They'll certainly be in the market for trade. They'll look and see if there's any good targets. Obviously, there's a few names that are out there. They'll kick the tires. Obviously, they've looked at DeAndre Hopkins to see if that's an option for them, something they would be interested in. I expect that they'll continue that. I'm used to the Chiefs being associated with pretty much every wide receiver that gets mentioned as far as trade or free agent or anything like that. The Chiefs are going to explore their options. So I think that's going to be par for the course going forward. But, once again, they've got so few guys under contract right now that, you're talking about whether a Justin Ross that was, a free agent last year that spent the entire season injured, even signing us to a futures contract, a guy like John Ross, who was a former first-round pick. Those are the guys that you're talking about as maybe vying for roster spots, because that group is so thin right now. But the Chiefs I've been comparing it to building a college basketball roster. As light as the Chiefs are in numbers at that spot, I mean, they need to not only hit the transfer portal, they need to deepen their classes a little bit and look at some freshmen. I mean, they truly need to be looking at the draft. They probably need to be looking at free agency. Another wide receiver of Juju Smith type caliber on a 1-year prove-it deal with a lot of incentives would be, I think, a good fit for this team. They need a little bit of everything. So I wouldn't be surprised if they expended draft picks, they put cap money into it, you name it. I think they're going to consider any and all options because I think they would like to add at least, I think, 2 or 3 more players who could compete for spots for that group before training camp.
Matt Derrick is our guest, covers the Kansas City Chiefs for ChiefsDigest.com. You can find him on Twitter at Matt Derrick, and he joins us for our Herman's Meat and Smokehouse Chiefs Insider every Friday at the bottom of the 3 o'clock hour here on 580 Sports Talk. Matt, how surprised were you that Juju didn't return to the Chiefs or that they didn't offer him the same kind of contract that he got from New England?
Yeah, I was definitely surprised. I mean, it wasn't a huge shock because you considered the possibility that Juju may be ready to move on, and certainly if the money wasn't there. Now, when you look at the way that contract was structured with the Patriots, I thought the Chiefs might be interested at that amount. I didn't think they'd be willing to go super high, but with the way this receiver market's been going, and when it looked like $11 million was going to be the top of the market per year, like, okay, that's probably about the ceiling of what you want to go for Juju. But looking at it and seeing, it's a little bit less than that, and there's a lot of incentives in there. It's kind of more shaping up to be maybe a 2-year, $24 million deal. That was really on the borderline for me about whether or not that would be the deal to go to. But I could make the case either way. I mean, for keeping Juju and letting him walk. And, on the other side, the devil's advocate side, if you look at his last games when that knee was flaring up, starting to bother him, he wasn't the same player. His numbers were significantly down. The last 3 games of the regular season and the postseason, I think he had something like 17 catches, 179 yards. I mean, that was over 6 games. That's just not the production you were expecting from that guy. So I think there's definitely concern with the knees and the injury history that you're going to be missing games. And that's why it looks like the Patriots contract has a lot of roster game bonuses in there that's built for him to make money if he plays. And I would have been possibly interested in that as the Chiefs, but I understand that if their philosophy is that, they want to be able to get a guy that they feel is going to be able to play 17 games in the postseason and not have to worry about the durability.
All right, Matt, we'll let you go after this. Who's your national championship pick?
I didn't fill out a bracket this year, so I never got around to it. So I don't have an official one. I don't even know who I was going to pick, but now that my Tigers have gotten to the first round, I'm going to go and pencil the Tigers in. I mean, let's go with it.
Hey, I love it. I say this all the time, I have picked KU to win the national title every year since I was in 6th grade. So I have absolutely no disrespect for making the homer pick for a national championship. If you want to talk all things Missouri Tigers and, of course, Kansas City Chiefs, go follow Matt Derrick on Twitter at Matt Derrick. Find his great coverage of the Kansas City Chiefs at ChiefsDigest.com, and he joins us every Friday here on 580 Sports Talk for our Herman's Meat and Smokehouse Chiefs Insider. Matt, we appreciate the time. We appreciate the news and the insight as always. Thank you so much. Enjoy your Mizzou basketball this weekend, and we will talk to you coming up next Friday.
Hey, everybody, enjoy your Wildcats and your Jayhawks, too. It's going to be a fun weekend.
That is Matt Derrick from ChiefsDigest.com. Always phenomenal stuff from Matt Derrick. I would say this all the time, the absolute nicest guy in the entire world. Matt is the absolute best. Coming up in the 4 o'clock hour of the show, we hope to bring you some audio from Norm Roberts, having some minor technical difficulties, but one way or the other, we'll talk some more Kansas Jayhawks. We will also preview K-State tonight as the Wildcats take on the Bobcats of Montana State. Cats versus Cats matchup coming up tonight. Plus, we've got some other reaction to what's going on around the NCAA tournament today. You can, of course, be a part of the show on the text line 785-272-9429 and in the comment section on YouTube. Our channel is Sports on 580 WIBW. We're back with more 580 Sports Talk right after our national and local news here at the top of the hour. now, 4 o'clock hour of 5 at Sports Talk, just getting started on this Feel Good Friday afternoon. I'm Brendan Dworzinski. That is Dan Lucero. Kyle Manthey holding things down in the studio back on Huntoon Hill for us while we are on the road in Des Moines on the Lewis Toyota Road to a Championship here on 580 Sports Talk. Live from Wells Fargo Arena in Des Moines, covering the Kansas Jayhawks this week. And, of course, our NCAA tournament coverage is brought to you by Lewis Toyota, where they can get you oil changes in under an hour. And with their large Toyota-certified inventory, they are your hometown dealer. That's Lewis Toyota and the Lewis Toyota Road to a Championship. You can find Lewis Toyota at the intersection of I-470 and Fair Lawn, back home in the capital city. Coming up here this hour on the program, we're going to switch gears from Kansas to Kansas State as K-State takes on Montana State coming up tonight. A surprising spread for that one that has moved away from the Cats. I'm somewhat curious as to why, so we'll touch on that coming up here in just a moment. We've also got our final What is Wrong with You of the week. We'll find our weekly champion, and we'll hear from Norm Roberts, KU head coach, coming up a little bit later on this hour, the acting head coach for KU, as he spoke about this upcoming matchup with Arkansas. We do not have the full audio. We still have over 10 minutes of it, but it was an amazingly long press conference.
It was so long.
It was extremely long. So we're going to get you the good stuff from what Norm Roberts had to say earlier on today. Of course, we're taking your texts throughout the show on our text line, 785-272-9429. And, of course, you can jump into the comment section on YouTube. Sports on 580 WIBW is, as always, the name of our channel. We'll have some more KU versus Arkansas preview stuff going out on YouTube a little bit later on, late this afternoon, early this evening, so make sure you're subscribed so you can go check that out as soon as it is published a little bit later on, and as we're streaming it live later on in the show. With that, Dan, let's jump right into things with the Kansas State Wildcats, who have their first NCAA tournament game coming up tonight. They're taking on Montana State, and the spread right now, as it stands,
7.5.
7.5, favoring the Cats.
It was 8.5. I think yesterday.
That's what I got it at.
Man, it's come back a point in Montana State's favor. So Kansas State 7.5 point favorites as we are sitting here right now, according to our friends at FanDuel. And that is wildly disrespectful to me, I think.
I just don't understand it at all. Like, nothing about, and I know Montana State is a good defensive team. They're a top 75 team in the country defensively, according to KenPom, but I got to be honest with you, man, I just don't get this spread one bit. Why is it so small? Montana State won the Big Sky tournament. The Big Sky was not exactly Murderer's Row this year.
And they didn't have to beat the 1 seed.
No.
They went through the number 9 seed, Northern Arizona, in the championship game. So when you go by the numbers with Montana State defensively, like on paper, they would seem to match up really well, because one thing that they do really, really well is they take away your scoring at the rim. Opponents shoot just 51% at the rim against Montana State. It's not like they got like 7'3" and 7'2". It's not Olajuwon and Samson Twin Towers up there for Montana State. They got some size, don't get me wrong, but that's what they do really well, is they make it hard for you to score at the rim. In Kansas State, they run a lot of back cut action, and they try and score at the rim. They drive downhill, and they try and score at the rim. So that's a matchup where Kansas State could potentially find themselves at odds with what it is that their opponent does best. And while I am understanding of that, and that the metrics are what they are, look, Montana State played 2 Power 5 schools, 2 of them.
Yep.
They played Oregon and Arizona. They gave up 80 points in both of those games. They gave 81 to Oregon. They gave 85 to Arizona. They lost to Oregon by 30. Then lost to Arizona by 21. Last year in the tournament, they were a 14 seed, pretty similar team. A lot of guys back, actually, from that team, including their 2 best guys this year. Montana State was a 14 seed, played a 3 seed from the Big 12, and Texas Tech beat them by 35. Beat them by 35. So I don't know what I'm missing here, but Montana, and I know we're not talking about a huge sample size, but Montana State against elite competition has not competed to the level that you would think they would compete at if they're only a 7.5 point underdog against a 3 seed.
No, I would agree with you. And I'm wondering, is it more about who Montana State is, or is that more about who Kansas State is, and the fact that Kansas State does not go into this game on the highest of highs? They did get bounced in their first game of the Big 12 tournament.
Yeah,
but
they've lost 2 straight going in.
we know, and at least from the committee and seating perspective, that matters far more to fans than it does to the committee. They have proven over time, again, apparently until KU lost to Texas, the conference tournaments, especially for the power conferences, really don't mean anything unless you win them, and you're a team that wouldn't normally win them, and you do. So I wouldn't think that should have negatively impacted K-State, and I'm surprised that the line is moving too. Like, why is there that much interest in Montana State?
I don't know. I think, again, we are, because we watch more Kansas State than most people, like we are more acutely in tune to the flaws of the Kansas State Wildcats.
Mm-hmm.
And they are a flawed team. If they weren't, they wouldn't be a 3 seed. They would have won the Big 12 and wouldn't have lost if they had no flaws. We know they're a flawed team, and their flaws are they're not super big.
Nope.
So they don't have like a great, underneath the basket presence on both ends of the floor. They turn the ball over too much at times. They're capable of taking better care of the ball than they did in their last 2 regular season games, but they are coming off back-to-back 20 turnover games. The warts are there for Kansas State, and those are the kinds of things that could make them susceptible. But again, they're going to have an athleticism advantage in this game. And so much of what Montana State does offensively, they average about 75 points a game. It's not that they're a great three-point shooting team. They're actually not. They're sub 34%, 33.8% from 3 as a team this year. What they do really well is get to the free throw line.
Mm-hmm.
Top 10 in the country in both free throws attempted and free throws made. They shoot 76% as a team from the line. So that's your strength. But you're counting on, you're counting on a friendly whistle. You're counting on the kind of whistle that sometimes you don't get in a tournament game,
Mm-hmm.
where officials might be more inclined to let some things go. And you're counting on Kansas State being a team that's just going to foul you over and over again. And I think that, sure, if Montana State shoots 25 free throws, that could put them in a really good position. Kansas State's a veteran team. They got veteran guys. I think they're going to be smart enough not to put this Montana State team at the free throw line. I think if they defend intelligently, they're going to be in good shape. I am really mystified, and I know we say it all the time. When we see a line like this, and it doesn't make any sense, we always say Vegas knows something we don't.
Mm-hmm.
Vegas must know something we don't. I'm saying here that I don't smell anything fishy. I think this is a good matchup for Kansas State. They're going to have the better athletes, and I just don't think Montana State is ready for the level of competition they're going to see from a Big 12 team tonight.
I think one of the things that stands out here is if K-State plays from ahead, I think they're going to end up being just fine. That is the one thing. If you end up in a situation where K-State plays with their food a little bit, or they just really struggle from the field, maybe Keontae Johnson doesn't get to play a ton because he gets into some foul trouble. Now, that hasn't been as big of an issue in recent weeks as it was midseason.
Yeah, he's cleaned that up quite a bit.
But I can at least foresee an outcome in which, K-State had an opportunity to break ahead. They haven't been able to. Now Montana State is lingering around. They can attack a little bit more. They don't have to take the rush 3. They can get downhill. They can try to get to the foul line, etc. Okay, you can see a situation where that plays out. They have played really well in their last handful of games. Montana State has. They're 13-1 over their last 14. But, look at they're not playing anyone. Again, that's not an especially difficult league. You lost a game to Weber State by 10 points. You then came back and beat by 2 points and scored 60 against in double overtime of the Big Sky tournament.
2 overtimes to score 16 a game.
One of the worst games I've seen all year, and I watched almost the entirety of it. But, Northern Arizona, Northern Colorado, they did beat Eastern Washington. That was the toughest team in that league. They were the best team in that league by far, and they did get them at the end of the season. But that's the feather in your cap team, because Eastern Washington is playing these same teams. Like, okay, not everyone gets to play Idaho State.
Yeah,
not everyone gets to play Portland State.
Yeah, go through their non-conference schedule, because they did. They only played 2 Power 5 teams, I believe. The rest of their non-conference schedule, they played a tournament team in Grand Canyon, got beat.
Lost.
They beat Long Beach State. They beat something called Warner Pacific. Real school or diploma mill? Who can say?
They got waxed by Oregon, though.
They won at North Dakota. They went to Montreal for a tournament, which is wild.
That is wild.
And went 0-3 in the Great White North. Best team they played there was who? Quinnipiac? Greensboro? Middle Tennessee?
Maybe Middle Tennessee.
Played Southern Utah, beat them. That was a
near tournament
team out of the WAC. Yeah. Did beat them. St. Thomas, Omaha, Northwest Indian College, and Arizona. That's your non-conference slate for Montana State. And look, I know that Kansas State did not exactly play Murderers Row in the non-conference themselves, but then they got into the conference and they played the toughest conference in the country and finished third in that conference and earned a number 3 seed. You got to do a lot of work to convince me that Montana State is going to be on level footing when it comes to preparedness for the athleticism that Kansas State has and the veterans that Kansas State had. I know, there were guys who played in the tournament last year for this Montana State team, but again, they played the third place team in the Big 12 as a 3 seed last year and lost by 35 points. And that wasn't an awesome Texas Tech team, and they scored in the 90s against them.
Tech, if I remember correctly, was a little overseeded probably last year. This K-State team is better than that Tech team for sure. Here's a couple other just pieces of information on both sides of the argument here. We're already through 5 games today, and we've already eliminated, 16 teams yesterday. Do you know how many teams are ranked in KenPom below Montana State right now that are still in the tournament?
That are still in the tournament? I'm going to say none.
1.
Princeton?
Fairleigh Dickinson.
Fairleigh Dickinson.
Yeah.
I forgot. Yeah, we still haven't. That one, number 1 hasn't played yet.
So that's it. No, Princeton has jumped up into the top 100 because they beat Arizona.
So yeah, shout out to them.
The other thing, too, and this is to a point you've brought up constantly, is what do you trust more in March? Teams that get up and down or teams that slow to a crawl? Like today, St. Mary's beats VCU. Whoever won that game, I wasn't going to believe in them going forward one bit.
Ace Baldwin tweaked his ankle, had to come out for a stretch for
tough.
VCU. Yeah.
Montana State, and this is according to KenPom, 219th in the country in tempo. Bottom half of the country, 219th. K-State, 40th in tempo. They'll get up and down the floor. I know if you run into a situation where you're turning the ball over, K-State, that's where they really dig themselves into holes. But, I mean, you gave us the numbers about how they've cleaned that up, at least to a certain degree, in recent games. Here's the one thing I can give you, and this is from The Athletic, that maybe you could argue if you're looking at this from a deading, I think Montana State will keep this close and competitive perspective. K-State is, in its last 8 games away from home, so neutral site or road games, they have lost 7 of 8. So they're 1-7 in those games, and they are just 2-6 against the spread. They will obviously be not at home for this game. They're down in Greensboro tonight. Montana State, in their 7 games as an underdog this year, 5-1-1 against the spread. So that might be, if you're just playing the trends, that is probably why you'll lead with Montana State. Because if you're talking eye test, you're talking actual game impacted numbers. Everything points to K-State. You
know who else was stinky poo outside of their home venue this year? The Maryland Terrapins.
Yeah, they were awful on the road.
Awful.
They had 1 road Big Ten win.
And they sent West Virginia packing yesterday. So, maybe you throw road record and such out the window when you get to the NCAA tournament. I will be curious what the atmosphere is in Greensboro. We haven't gotten a chance to really dial in on one site or another today, but you can get in for both sessions in Greensboro today for $40. K-State sold their allotment of tickets. I know that, but Greensboro not exactly pumped and jacked for Xavier and this Pitt Iowa State game. It has not been Greensboro didn't get any ACC presence. So it might be a crowd where guys are going to have to create their own juice a little bit. And I think Kansas State will. The vibe that I've gotten from Kansas State in preparation for this week, yeah, they were disappointed not to have won their first round game of the Big 12 tournament. And I think Jerome Tang, it was tempting to look at that game and just say, well, TCU shot the heck out of the ball, and they're a good team other than that, but then they had a great shooting night, and that's just how you get beat. Jerome Tang didn't want to talk about that after the game. He wanted to talk about toughness. He wanted to talk about being physically ready, and he made sure to say that is not going to happen again. That is not going to happen to us again. I'm not going to let that happen to us again. So I think you have a veteran team that's going to be prepared for tournament play. They're going to be fired up, and I think they're going to be loose. I think this team is so loose. I think they have that understanding that being in the tournament when nobody expected them to be in the tournament is house money. And I expect they're going to play with a lot of confidence, with a lot of freedom, and I think they're going to take it to Montana State. I don't think they're going to mess around tonight. It bears noting, even though they've lost their last 2 games, they've gotten out to incredibly good starts in both of those games. I think they were up 11-2 on TCU. I think they were up something similar. They had a double-digit first-half lead against West Virginia. I think if they do that to Montana State in the NCAA tournament, I think they'll be able to keep their foot on the gas and bring this one home. and move on to the second round of the NCAA tournament for the first time since 2018.
If I can indulge one other metric I've been using, I've been calling it my system on the show. My guy, Boydetology, his numbers, he's got K-State as more than a 14-point favorite in this game. KenPom is closer. They have that closer to that original 8.5 spread. Boydetology, 14 points. He was 11-5 against the spread yesterday with his picks. I'm going to lean in that direction. Real quick, to change topics completely here before we get to what is wrong with you, we've got more breaking Chiefs news.
Yes, we do. They've got another safety.
We have a replacement for Juan Thornhill on the books. It is safety Mike Edwards, who has played 4 years in the NFL. He was and I got to make sure I know when he was drafted, late third-round pick, 99th overall of the Bucks back in 2019. So he won a championship with the Bucks a couple years ago. Played safety for the Buccaneers each of the last 4 years. Had it coming off his best year. His approximate value number, according to Pro Football Reference, highest of his career, highest in career tackles with 82. Now, granted, Tampa had a ton of injuries in its secondary last year. Has 3 defensive touchdowns over the last 2 seasons, 5 interceptions over the last 2 years, 7 in his career. Seems like a reasonable signing, especially if you think now that your starting duo, and we know the Chiefs like to run multiple safeties or 3 safeties as much as any team in the league. But if you're assuming your starting duo is going to be Justin Reed, Brian Cook, Mike Edwards is your third safety. That's a pretty good addition.
Yeah, I think that works out pretty good. And I think it's interesting to note that he and Drew Tranquill are each coming off of career years in tackles and in usage, things like that. I think that is important to note. The Chiefs are getting those guys, and they're getting them on 1-year deals, which is also very interesting that they're bringing in guys on 1-year contracts and using that to fill some holes on their defense for the coming year. And some of that is just, bargain shopping a little bit because, you're going to do some long-term things probably this offseason. But, a couple of, I think, good value pickups, good value for the money, and useful cogs to replace players who have departed or, in Drew Tranquill's case, just strengthen a position that already felt like it was in pretty good hands with Nick Bolton and Willie Gay and Leo Chanel.
That's an interesting point you bring up about the 1-year contracts, because I hadn't thought about that, because I was going to ask you, when you made the point about 2 guys coming off of career years with Tranquill and with Edwards, why did those guys not get second contracts with their team? Or why did they last until a couple days into free agency? We didn't hear about deals before, during the legal tampering period. But on 1-year deals, I think that's actually a really smart piece of business by the Chiefs, because now you can say, okay, if it's a real thing and Mike Edwards is now, he's hitting his stride, this is his peak, he's going to have a similar year coming up this year as either a second or third safety, or Drew Tranquill, wow, he's better than Leo Chanel right now, and we can put him in, or someone gets hurt and he's a valuable starter for 5, 6, 7, 8 games, whatever it ends up being, well then great, because there's no such thing as a bad 1-year deal. It's 1 year, you're not really on the hook for anything, you can make it fit under the cap and all that. I just think that's a really smart piece of business, because it's essentially low risk, medium, maybe even high reward.
Yeah, and the thing about Tranquill, too, it's a 1-year deal. Willie Gay's on the last year of his rookie deal next year. If Tranquill outplays Gay, you re-sign one and not the other. If Gay outplays Tranquill, then maybe you keep Willie Gay. So
that's
maybe
true.
A little bit of internal competition there. It is a well-regarded move, I think, in league circles. I just saw Doug Farrar, who covers the National Football League for USA Today, and his comment on the Drew Tranquill signing is, somebody arrest Brett Veach. So pretty. I'm
assuming that's in a complimentary way.
Yes. Not like me saying that Tommy Lloyd should go to the Gulag because Arizona lost to Princeton in basketball. No, I think that's a very different kind of attitude there. If I may double back to college basketball,
please do.
I think it is very important that I let people know that this March you can take your first shot at college hoops with FanDuel Sportsbook and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets, up to $200. That's right. Just bet $20 on the bracket. You'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's $200 you can spend betting everything from the money line to point spreads, that 5 versus 12 seed matchup you've been eyeing, all on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. There's no better place to bet the tournament than FanDuel Sportsbook. You can sign up today by going to FanDuel.com/Lucero. You first-time users, go to FanDuel.com/Lucero and make every moment more with FanDuel all tournament long. He must be 21 and present in Kansas. First online real money wager only. $10 deposit required. Refund issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 14 days. Restrictions apply. See full terms at FanDuel.com/sportsbook. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino, LLC. Gambling problem? Getting help is your best bet. Call 1-800-522-4700 or visit ksgamblinghelp.com.
Let's get to a quick break. We'll find our weekly champion in What Is Wrong With You after this on 580. It is time to find our weekly winner in What Is Wrong With You here on 580 Sports Talk with Brendan and Dan. Two new stores going head-to-head today to wrap up the week. Our current winner, and I think it's easy to say, the odds-on favorite to maintain its spot atop the What Is Wrong With You battle this week, the felonious father, the dad in Scotland who tried to rob his own son, even after finding out it was his own son.
Trying to rob him at an ATM and take 10 pounds.
Approximately
off
$12.
of him.
Yeah.
That was worth 26 months in jail, and it was your own kid. Father of the year.
Absolutely incredible. I will go first for our stories today, and we're going to Hialeah Gardens, Florida. This is a story that was just completed this week, but it actually started all the way back in spring of 2020. So Miami-Dade police arrested a Hialeah Gardens man after accusing him of having a home he was contracted to purchase set on fire in order to avoid losing his deposit. 51-year-old Osmani Amorales faces 2 felony charges. Police believe he either set a blaze himself or conspired to do so. According to an arrest report, Amorales entered a contract to purchase a home located in the northwest corner of 130th Street, in Hialeah Gardens back in February 2020. He told police that March, when the pandemic started, that his business suffered to the point where he was forced to pull out of the agreement, but he had already made a $20,000 deposit. So, just after 11 p.m. on April 28th of that year, police said emergency crews were sent to the home after receiving reports of a residential fire and found that the garage had been pried open with a 42-inch metal crowbar, which had then been left at the scene. Arson investigators determined the fire had been set intentionally. They were able to track down the crowbar to the Home Depot in town, and a review of surveillance showed that Amorales and his wife bought the crowbar using his debit card. As he spoke with detectives, Amorales, quote, looked surprised to see photographs of the purchase, the report states, and then would not answer any further questions.
I bet he wouldn't.
He is charged with arson and conspiracy to commit arson and was taken to the Turner Guilford Knight Correctional Center and has been held on $17,500 bond.
Incredibly good line from our guy Vance on the YouTube comments. That gives new meaning to a housewarming.
That's really good.
Really good line.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, man. Here's the thing about arson investigators. They're really good at their jobs.
Yeah.
They're really, really good at their job. And they're going to find out if you set a fire on purpose.
Yes.
Like, you're not going to get away with doing that. If you set a fire on purpose, they will find out.
Mhm.
They're not going to show up and say, well, this is odd. Yeah, well, I guess it must have just been an act of God, and then leave and collect their paycheck. No, man, they're going to find out if it was arson.
Mhm.
And guess what? Yeah, that was arson.
Extremely funny. He was surprised by it. Really? I bought that crowbar? Really?
Nah, not me. Yeah, bud.
Have I ever told you about the time something like that happened to me when I was in, I think, 8th grade, when
No.
I got in trouble for breaking a window at school?
Did they get you on the video?
Yeah, I was walking out. I had an argument with someone, not like a violent one, but I was not in a great mood. And I was walking out one of the back doors of the school, huge school. And it was a really old door and had these 4 glass panes that were rectangles just stacked on top of each other. And I decided on my way home that day to open the door with my foot. And I may have spider-webbed the piece of glass.
Oh, no.
So I come back to school, maybe a week later, maybe even that same week. And the assistant principal, who everyone liked a lot better than the actual principal, comes up to me and he says, hey, Brendan, can I talk to you for a minute? And the bell rings. I'm like, no, I got to get to class. And he goes, no, you can wait. And he said, is there any reason why you kicked open a door and broke a glass pane and didn't tell anyone about it? I was like, no, there really wasn't a reason, actually. And then he was like, well, we have you on. And I said, I don't remember doing that. And he goes, are you sure? Because we have video of it.
Oh, God.
Suddenly I remembered, oh, yeah, you know what? It was Wednesday, wasn't it? Yeah. I do remember that happening.
What a horrifying sentence to be said to you about anything.
Yeah.
Are you sure? Because we've got the tape.
That's right up there with, yes, I've seen your tweets before in terms of things I do not want to hear from someone in a position of authority.
Boy, that is a fact.
Thankfully, I didn't end up having to pay for it. I just got a stern talking to in the office, so
Man,
I can live with that.
remembering the time I met the PR director for the Colorado Rockies, and that was the first thing he said to me was, I know you from Twitter. And I said, oh, no. It was fine. That was 2017. They were good. They were good. So was I. So that story had a happy ending. But for my story today, we are staying in Florida. We go to Tampa, Lake County. A man accused of holding a massage spa employee at gunpoint and demanding sex acts from her. It was
gross.
not that kind of massage spa. Officers responded to A1 Massage in Eustis around 10:40 a.m. Police said Timothy Paul Taylor, 35, walked into the building and confronted a female employee who was alone, allegedly held a gun to her head, demanded she perform sex acts on him, threatening to kill her if she tried to call for help. She refused, and Taylor escaped out the back door of the building before taking off in a car. The woman went to a nearby business for help. She was not hurt, but is still shaken up, understandably, by the encounter. After escaping the massage spa, police tracked Taylor to his family's home and found him around 2:30 p.m. thanks to some help from Taylor's mom. She said he had left and went into the woods, and that he confessed to her that he had did something that he shouldn't have done.
Yeah, I'll say.
Taylor was taken into custody after allegedly resisting arrest and getting bit by a police dog. And he was charged with a whole lot of things: attempted sexual battery with a deadly weapon, aggravated battery with a deadly weapon, possession of firearm by a convicted felon, aggravated assault with intent to commit a felony, and resisting an officer without violence. Bad guy. Bad guy.
You can tell the story was especially heinous because as we're working in the media room, I noticed multiple sets of eyes darting over to our corner all of a sudden to see what that story was.
Well, yeah, you say the word sex out loud in a media workroom, and there are gonna be some eyes that perk up. Not typical media workroom conversation at the NCAA tournament. But yeah, that was the wrong kind of massage parlor for that, and he thought that a gun might solve his problems, which again, not usually how it works.
You've had some real pervs this week in your stories.
Yes, yeah, it's
last couple of days.
Yeah, another double Florida day too. We should start keeping track. We should really have like a running tally of how many of our stories come from the state of Florida.
We could probably go back through the archives of our show notes and find out.
We probably could.
Well, that one is the winner today, easily.
Yeah,
but he does not win the week.
No.
The dad,
father of the year, 100%. I mean, he tried to rob his own son, and then his own flesh and blood was like, "Dad, what are you doing?" And he's like, "Need that money, son. Come up off
$12.
Come up off that 10-pound note."
All right, well, that is our winner for the week in What Is Wrong With You. It'll advance to our monthly Tournament of Champions, which is coming up, Dan, in just 2 weeks. In fact, 2 weeks from today will be the final day of the month.
Yeah, that's right.
That is when we will find our champion for the month of March. Right now, though, we need to take a break. We'll come back. Norm Roberts, the acting head coach of the Kansas Jayhawks. He spoke earlier today. We'll hear what he had to say coming up after this on 580 Sports Talk. We're back on 580 Sports Talk. Brendan Dworzynski and Dan Lucero here with you live from Des Moines, Iowa, and the Wells Fargo Arena in Des Moines. This is the Lewis Toyota Road to a Championship, brought to you, obviously, by Lewis Toyota, located at the intersection of I-470 and Fairlawn, back in the capital city. Buy local, by Lewis, the Lewis Toyota Road to a Championship. And we're going to hear now from the acting head coach of the Kansas Jayhawks. That is Norm Roberts. No new news, by the way, on Bill Self today. We're still waiting, just like everybody else is, to find out if Self is going to be able to go coming up tomorrow against Arkansas. I really do think that's going to be huge if Self cannot go, because there's just so many little things that happen that you trust Norm Roberts to get the big stuff done, and he has to this point. I mean, 7-1 in 8 games as the head coach this year. He's done a great job, but I don't know. You lose a Hall of Famer, and obviously things are going to change. So I think he needs to be back for KU to have the best chance of winning, but we will find out when probably KU takes the court coming up tomorrow, if not tomorrow morning. So Norm Roberts still handling media duties for the Kansas Jayhawks. And now let's hear what Norm Roberts had to say at the dais in Des Moines earlier on this afternoon.
Arkansas is a terrific program. Obviously, they've got some of the best athletes in the country. They're very long and athletic, play extremely fast. They got 3 to 4 potential NBA guys, and Nick Smith is terrific. Jordan Walsh is a great defender. Davis is a terrific point guard, and Council is maybe as good of an athlete as you're going to see in the country. And then Black is a kid that plays multiple positions. So they got depth, they got size, and they have great athletic ability.
Okay, we'll take questions. Please raise your hand. Coming to this side on the aisle.
Hey, Norm. Bob Holt, Arkansas Democrat. Is that?
How you doing?
I guess, what's this been like for you the last few games, filling in for Coach Self? How's he doing, and do you expect to be leading the team again tomorrow? Kind of what's the update on that?
Well, Coach is doing well. It's a day-to-day situation with him and everything, but he's doing good. He was in practice with our guys just a little while ago and coaching them, so we'll see what happens.
Gonna stay on this side right behind him.
Yeah, Eric Olson with the Associated Press. Norm, just one other question on Bill. How could you kind of walk us through just the communication process that you guys go through with him and the players, and also how often you meet with him while you're here in Des Moines going over stuff, and just kind of what the nuts and bolts of that are?
Well, it's the same that we always do. You know, we have scout report. We meet probably 2 times a night and go over different scenarios and what we want to do and how he wants us to play, both offensively and defensively. And so we haven't had any extra meetings in those things. And as a staff, we always collaborate and work together, and everybody has input on what we think would be the best situation for us.
Hi, Norm. David Lawrence, Jayhawk Radio. Can you talk about the comparison with any Big 12 team that you see in Arkansas?
That's tough. I don't think anybody in the country has as many athletes as Arkansas has. We've had different teams in our league that are pretty athletic. Baylor's athletic, but they're not as tall, long. West Virginia's athletic, but they're really long, but they're not as fast. So we played against a combination of those things. Probably the closest one would be Texas. Texas probably has as many athletes and length that's similar to Arkansas.
With DeJuan and Kevin, 2 of the best defenders around, just talk about, taking them to the fight against these great athletes.
Well, it's going to be important that we play team defense. It can't just be one guy because they're very good at putting it on the bounce and attacking the basket. So we've got to be in gaps. We got to help each other. We've got to communicate quite a bit. And then once the shot is taken, more importantly, we got to go rebound it. They do a great job of crashing the glass. And so we've got to do a good job in rotation rebounding.
Hey, Coach, Scott Reese, KCTV5. I have a follow-up as well. I'm sure you've poured over a season's worth of Arkansas tape at this point. I'm just curious, they looked like a Final Four team back in Maui in December, and then they kind of hit the skids late in the season. Did you notice anything that was different about them the last third of the season, maybe that they weren't doing, that they did do early on?
No, not that. I know Nick Smith was out with an injury, and they've dealt with other injuries just like everybody in the country has. And they play in a great league in the SEC. So, everybody's going to have ups and downs in their league. We did too. So they're playing very good basketball right now. And I know they're an extremely competitive team. So we're going to have to be very, very focused and competitive and aggressive throughout the whole game.
And maybe just a word from a viewer standpoint at what a treat this game is going to be with, as you allude to, all the NBA talent that's going to be on the floor on both sides.
Oh yeah. It'll be up and down. It'll be an up and down game, and they're always in attack mode. We want to be in that same mode throughout the game. It's going to come down to getting stops. It's going to come down to defense and rebounding the basketball.
Stay on the same side. Go ahead, sir.
Adam Kilgore with the Washington Post. During the games, are you making decisions like your own way, how you usually coach a game, or are you at all trying to like mimic and think like Bill Self when you're out there? Like what's the balance there if there is one?
Well, if you say mimic and think, like, we've been together for almost 25 years, so we probably do finish each other's sentences and in basketball terms. But no, I do try to think of what he would want to do. If it's a situation of getting the ball inside, if it's a situation of trapping the ball screen, where we would want to attack. But those things we talk about a lot before the game even begins, on how we want to attack, what we want to do, how we want to play the game. So I just revisit that in my head and then coach that way.
Okay, we're going to switch sides. Go ahead, sir.
Coach Chris Lazzarino with Kansas Alumni. Ask you a question about Jalen, if I might. Perhaps off the court, how much, you have so many years as an educator and a coach and helping young men grow up. He seems, from our perspective, has grown up, matured as much as anybody we've seen maybe in recent years. Could you just talk about his development as a young man away from the game?
Yeah, he's tremendous. He has been one of the best leaders we've ever had, and one of the most competitive kids we've ever had. And everybody knows Jalen went through a situation, but I've never seen a kid handle a situation like he did and take full accountability. We talk about when that situation happened, usually a kid addresses the team and says, "I'm sorry." He didn't do that. He addressed the team for 10 to 15 minutes saying, "I'm taking total responsibility. I screwed up here. This shouldn't happen. I'm not going to be a distraction to the team." I mean, he went through a whole thing on his own, and he really took accountability, and he's grown up so much. He cares so much about Kansas. He cares so much about his teammates, and that's reflective every day when he comes to practice and when he's around.
Remote corner over here.
Abby Dodge, KSHB 41. You compared Arkansas to Texas in your last appearance. You did not come up with the win. Does that worry you at all for tomorrow's game?
Well, Arkansas is quick and athletic, just like Texas, and we played against that all year. So we know what we need to do. We know we need to be keyed up. We know that we need to be very active in what we do. And, the main thing for us is we can't let people get comfortable. We let them, when you let somebody get comfortable, they're going to play very well. So we have to make them uncomfortable, and there's ways that we can do that. And then we've got to be able to get out and transition and get easy looks for ourselves.
Switch sides on the aisle.
Coach John Neighbors, 103.7 The Buzz. I know you talk a lot about Arkansas's team, but just as coach to coach, Eric Musselman, just what's your impression of him, his style, philosophy, just his overall approach to the game?
Coach Muss is terrific. He's done a great job at Arkansas. He's an attack mode guy. Everybody knows that. He's a very passionate guy. Obviously, his family history and coaching and those things. So he's done a fabulous job at Arkansas.
And Norm, Bob Holt again from there. So Democrat, I had a two-parter, if that's okay. First off, obviously you guys are number one seed for a reason, just like all the others, and the number one seeds win most of the time, but they don't always win. How do you see a 1-8 matchup against a team, like you said, that's as athletic as in the country? How dangerous a team do you see Arkansas as being?
I think when you get in the NCAA tournament, everybody's dangerous. Every team is really good. Howard gave us all they could early on in the game, and then we were able to get some breathing room from them. But they're a very good basketball team. You know, I said this yesterday. You're playing against champions. You're playing against guys that had really, really good seasons that know how to win. And you know, Arkansas is a team that comes from a great conference, the SEC. They know how to play in big games. They know what it's like to win big. So we knew the 8-9 game, be it Arkansas or Illinois, was going to be a tough battle. And you have to beat tough teams, and you're going to have tough games in order to win a national championship. And we knew that last year when we did it. You know, Creighton was a bear of a game for us last year, and this year will be the same. So you just got to go out and execute.
I want to ask you about a couple of their guys. Ricky Council, you alluded to, you know, he's so athletic the way he dunks. He had a nice bounce back game after not playing real well in Nashville at their SC tournament. Well, I wonder what you think of him, his overall game. And then Mekhi Mitchell, number 15 for them. He's had some pretty good games here of late in the postseason. I wonder what your thoughts are on him.
Well, Ricky is an explosive athlete. I mean, his first step is ridiculously quick, and he's explosive to the rim, but he also can make shots. He's a really, really good player, and he's had a great year for them. Mitchell and his brother, they've always been good players. They got great hands. They know how to screen. They know how to play pinch posts. They know how to attack the glass. And they make an impact on the game defensively by walling up and blocking shots. So they've also both had a great year there at Arkansas.
Hey, Norm, Eric Olson with the Associated Press again. Wanted to ask you about Grady, and are you aware of his mom's basketball prowess from her high school and college days, and is that any topic of conversation around the team?
Well, not around the team, but with me and Grady, he knows that his mom's the best player in the house. So we know all that, and his mom was a terrific player at Iowa State, and I think that's helped Grady a lot as a player. You know, when you're coaching Grady and talking to him about different things, you know, his mom knows what's going on. She knows when he's playing well and when he's not, and when he's doing the things he's supposed to do. So she's been a joy to be around, and she's great with him and keeping his head level, so as well as his dad, Bart.
Have another 5 minutes in the press conference here. Other questions? Okay, we're on opposite side.
Hey, Coach Scotty Bordelon with WholeHogSports.com in Arkansas. You mentioned Anthony Black earlier, how he can play multiple positions. Could you maybe expound on his game and kind of what's jumped out in prep on him?
Well, the one thing about Anthony, he's always been a great passer. Always been a great passer, but now his body's even stronger than it was coming out of high school. He's explosive getting to the basket. He's become a very good defender as well. And, you know, there's no doubt that he's got an NBA career ahead of him. And, you know, he's got a great basketball IQ.
That is Norm Roberts speaking earlier today, KU interim head coach, well, not even really interim, just acting head coach, while Bill Self is out and rehabbing and hopefully getting closer and closer to returning for the Kansas Jayhawks. If you want more coverage of the press conferences from earlier today, you heard in there the moderator in the interview room saying, 5 minutes left. Well, we cut it off before then because, well, we got to all the good stuff. And again, that was one of the longest press conferences I've ever been to. But if you want the full audio, you can head over to our website. That's 580wibw.com. There you'll find the audio from Norm Roberts as well as from Kevin McCullough, Joe Yesufu, and our full preview for KU versus Arkansas coming up tomorrow. 4:15 tip-off. That game, I think, is going to be on CBS for television. Is it? I don't know.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so that one will be on CBS. We're going to get to scores and action from around the NCAA tournament coming up during our 580 Sports headlines at the top of the 5 o'clock hour. Dan, we are currently in the midst of maybe a bottom 5 worst tournament game in the history of the NCAA tournament. Pitt versus Iowa State.
Pitt 56, Iowa State 37 as they approach a minute to go in Greensboro. Iowa State, the last time they scored this few points in a tournament game, and I guess it's not done yet, they could make a shot or two more as Pitt just hit 3 with a minute to go to really put a capper on it. You have to go back to like World War II to the last time Iowa State was this bad on offense in an NCAA tournament game. It was like 1944 against Pepperdine. They threw a graphic up and everything. Hey, good for them. They made a layup, 59-39.
Wow.
You know, they had those 2 wins against Baylor. They must really match up well against Baylor because against every other team in the conference from the KU win afterward, they looked miserable. and they are going home. And the Big 12 now 3-2 in the NCAA tournament so far.
Really quickly, before we get to our top of the hour break, and we do have to get there in just a matter of moments, after beating KU earlier this season in Ames, Iowa State has won 3 games since. That game took place the first week of February.
2 of them against Baylor and 1 against a Mike Miles-less TCU. So
we've got headlines coming up after our national and local news right here on 580 WIBW. now. 1.5 hour left on 580 Sports Talk today. 1.5 hour left on 580 Sports Talk this week here on the Sports Voice of Kansas. I'm Brendan Dworzinski. That is Dan Lucero, and we are finishing things up with you from Des Moines here on the Lewis Toyota Road to a Championship on 580 Sports Talk. We're following the Kansas Jayhawks through their first 2 games of the NCAA tournament. And of course, as I just mentioned, this is the Lewis Toyota Road to a Championship brought to you by Lewis Toyota, located at I-470 and Fairlawn, right here in the capital city. With a large Toyota certified inventory, they are your hometown dealer. That's Lewis Toyota, again at I-470 and Fairlawn in Topeka. Coming up here in this shortened final portion of the show. We're done at 5:30. We are going to have our 580 Sports Talk headlines here in just a moment, and we'll get you a final word heading into the weekend, into K-State basketball tonight. We've got KU tomorrow. Hopefully we've got K-State on Sunday as well, so we'll get a final thought on all of that. If you've missed any of the show today or any of the show throughout the week, head over to our website. That's 580wibw.com. Then just hover your cursor over the podcasts tab and then click on 580 Sports Talk, and that is where you will find the hour-by-hour breakdown of the show. You are also welcome to be a part of the show right here on our text line, 785-272-9429, or you can jump into the comment section on YouTube. Our channel is Sports on 580 WIBW, and we're going to have some more KU content coming out over the next, 2 days, as long as we're here. Anyway, we'll have a recap from tomorrow's game. We'll have a video coming out a little bit later on as well. So make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube so you are getting all of that content as soon as it comes out. I wanted to get you a really quick update on the Basketball Mayhem Challenge that we have over at 580wibw.com right now. Some picks going better than others. Right now, atop the leaderboard, hate to say it, in first place right now, all alone, Jake LeBon.
You got to be kidding me.
19 points. Now, we do have what appears to be a 5-way tie for second place. So congrats to Dustin, Steven, Steve, Lawrence, and our own Kyle Manthe, who is holding things down back at the Huntoon Hill Studios in Topeka. Kyle tied in second place as well. And he's got the second most available points as well of anyone in the tournament. Dan, you are in third in a 4-way tie. I've had a stronger day today. I'm now alone in 7th place. So I'm fighting back.
So you got that going for you, which is nice. I don't know how many others who are in those top 3 positions have already lost their champion, or if it's just me, but that's going to really hinder my ability to stay near the top of the leaderboard, I'm sure. It has been a good day for me, though. Only miss so far is I picked Iowa State to win their first round tournament game. That didn't happen.
No. Well, let's use that as a segue right into today's 580 Sports Talk headlines, and we'll just run through the action from the NCAA tournament so far today. We've got one game going on right now. They're at the under-16 media timeout in the second half, and Connecticut starting to pull away a little bit from Iona. UConn is up 52-43. Iona came out guns blazing, but UConn is starting to pull away in that one. Other games that have gone final over the course of the day. We know that Michigan State defeated USC in the first game of the day, 72-62. That was a great first half. That was one of the best halves of basketball we've had really all tournament so far, and certainly if you include all halves, the second half of Pitt versus Iowa State and the first half, that entire game belongs in a dumpster for all eternity. We'll get to that score in a minute. Xavier knocked off Kennesaw State. Man, Kennesaw State had a real chance, too, a couple of times.
They were up 13 in the second half, and Xavier rallied back.
They were up 1, missed a layup. Then they were down 3 and stepped out of bounds when they had a chance with one last possession. Xavier iced them with 2 free throws, so the Musketeers are moving on. Baylor survives UC Santa Barbara. The Gauchos were fighting pretty darn hard in that contest as well, but Baylor pulled away late. St. Mary's knocks off VCU 63-51. Marquette took care of Vermont 78-61. Scare for Marquette in that game, though. Tyler Kolek, the Big East Player of the Year, 13-team All-American, he got hurt early in the game, was able to return, and Marquette cruises to its first win in quite some time. Pitt beat Iowa State 59-41 in one of the worst tournament games of all time. And in heartbreaking fashion, with a late bucket by the Cyclones, we did get to 100 points. 100 right on the nose.
Pitt had more turnovers in this game than they did field goals, and they won by 18 points. Iowa shot 23% from the field. It's the worst field goal shooting performance by a team in the tournament in 9 years since Cal Poly shot 21% in a loss to Wichita State, who was an undefeated 1 seed in that tournament and not an 11 seed who had to play in Dayton 3 days ago. Truly embarrassing result for Iowa State. But if you've been paying any attention to them through the month of February, other than the games against Baylor, inexplicably, this is who they were.
Caleb Grill, your thoughts? Also a game that just went final. Creighton takes down North Carolina State 72-63. Terquavion Smith of North Carolina State, 1, great name. 2, he had more than half of North Carolina State's total points. He had 32 of their 63 points, and they still come up 9 short against Creighton. That was a great game today. We've had not a ton of upsets. It's been mostly chalk, but really good games for the most part. At least the games you would have expected would be good. Other than Iowa State being dirty brown water trash, has any other game really jumped out to you?
Well, Baylor's defensive performance in the second half against UCSB, I think, is pretty promising. We've said all year that Baylor is not the same kind of defensive team that they typically have been under Scott Drew. And they went into the locker room down a point to the Gauchos, and then they held them to 20 points in the second half. And some of that is Baylor's super athletic, and they just had a raw athleticism advantage. And some of it also was UCSB shoots the 3 generally pretty well, and they just couldn't make anything in this game. They shot 25%, 4 of 16 from behind the arc. So I don't know how real this is, but if it is real, that would bode well for Baylor's ability to make a deep run in this tournament. They had better bring that same kind of defensive effort against a Creighton team that can really fill it in the round of 32. But yeah, other than that, pretty chalky day. UConn's out to now a 9-point lead over Iona, 54-45, as that game is the only one ongoing. And then we've got the whole evening session to look forward to, including K-State, Montana State at 8:40. And if you're interested in putting a little action on any of those games, you can take your first shot at college hoops with FanDuel Sportsbook and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets up to $200. That's right. Just bet $20 on the bracket and you get $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's $200 you can spend betting everything from the money line to point spreads for that 5 versus 12 seed matchup you've been eyeing, all on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. There's no better place to bet the tournament than FanDuel Sportsbook. You can sign up today, you first-time users. You want to give it a whirl and get those bonus bets, go to FanDuel.com/Lucero. That's Lucero, and make every moment more with FanDuel all tournament long. You must be 21 and present in Kansas. First online real money wager only. $10 deposit required. Refund issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 14 days. Restrictions apply. See full terms at FanDuel.com/sportsbook. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino, LLC. Gambling problem? Getting help is your best bet. Call 1-800-522-4700 or visit ksgamblinghelp.com.
2 final thoughts on college basketball before we move on to our next headline. 1, for the schedule tonight, 8 games to go once this Iona game finishes up. Anyone in particular that you think might be upset alert, or any games in particular you think will be the best game of the night?
Well, maybe it's just because we're in Des Moines and surrounded by school spirit, but I got my eye on the Drake Bulldogs tonight against Miami. It does sound like Miami's big man, Norshad Omier, is going to play for Miami, but Drake can really score. They've got good shooters. Tucker DeVries has a case for being the best player on the floor, and we haven't seen a 12 beat a 5 yet. Typically we get one of those every tournament, and Drake is the 12 seed's last chance. Also, I think Florida Atlantic Memphis is going to be a banger.
Yep.
I think Indiana's on upset watch. Only a 4.5-point favorite against 13 seed Kent State. Indiana didn't exactly play it well down the stretch. They're not a great shooting team. They'll probably try and bully Kent State. I think they will win, but certainly the books think that Kent State's got a real chance tonight. So yeah, it should be some good games.
Let me give you one other one. I don't think Fairleigh Dickinson is going to win. I'm sure they will get beaten fairly handily by Purdue. I would love to see FDU press the entire game. I would love to see them try to go full 40 minutes of hell, try to just beat Purdue into oblivion as best as they can. Because if they can prove that you can throw Purdue off kilter with any team with any amount of talent with a press, Purdue's gone on Sunday. No doubt in my mind. They are toast on Sunday if that happens.
I think so too. Next headline here on our headlines here, our 5A Sports Talk headlines in this 5 o'clock hour. A couple of signings for the Kansas City Chiefs today. The Chiefs adding to their defense. You may have seen that the other day Juan Thornhill signed with the Cleveland Browns, so the Chiefs had a vacancy in the secondary, and it sounds like that will be filled by veteran safety Mike Edwards, most recently of the Tampa Bay Bucks. The former Kentucky Wildcat was drafted in the 3rd round by Tampa Bay and played there in the last 4 years, set a career high with 82 tackles last season, and also had 2 interceptions. He is a safety with some ball skills that will join Brian Cook and Justin Reed in that safety role in place of Juan Thornhill next year. Chiefs also made an addition at linebacker. Drew Tranquil, formerly of the Los Angeles Chargers, set to sign with the Chiefs, a 1-year deal, $3 million, could be worth up to $5 million with incentives. The former Notre Dame standout had dealt with some injuries his first couple of years in the league, but is coming off his healthiest and most productive season of his career this past year for the Chargers. I'm going to pull up his Pro Football Reference page. I apologize. He did rack up a career-high 146 combined tackles, had 10 tackles for a loss, also 5 sacks. So he can really play any linebacker role. He can play hash mark to hash mark. He can be a blitzing linebacker, and he can also be effective in coverage. He intercepted a pass during the regular season and intercepted a pass in the playoffs this year as well. So a versatile addition and a veteran addition to the Chiefs linebacking core. Kind of came out of nowhere. Of the places you thought they might target free agents in this early free agent period, linebacker was probably pretty low on the list. But not only do they go get a linebacker, they go get a starting caliber linebacker. Maybe that's a message to Willie Gay, but it certainly does make that linebacking group, with Tranquil joining Gay and Bolton and Leo Chanel, that much more formidable.
I think it could be a message to Willie Gay. Here's another thought, though, because we had the discussion just a couple weeks ago. What are the positions that the Chiefs really don't need to touch at all? And linebacker is one of the very few that, they're completely fine as it is. Is this maybe a further approach? Because we talked about it with the defensive line. We talked about it with Turk Wharton and his athleticism, as well as the Charles Omenihu signing and his size and athleticism, and the fact that he can rush from the inside as well as on the right end or on the left end. Is this another sign of the Chiefs trying to go almost positionless defense? That, yes, Drew Tranquil is a linebacker, but we can blitz him through the A-gap. We can send him off the edge wide 9 if we need to, similar to Leo Chanel a year ago. Remember, from training camp, we said, what is Chanel's role going to end up being? Is he going to be a blitzing linebacker? Is he going to be a true off-ball backer? Is he going to be what is effectively a third edge? What is his role going to be? Maybe the Chiefs are trying to tell us by adding players like Drew Tranquil, adding players like Omenihu, that they want more guys who can play more positions. Maybe not great at any one thing, but kind of these jack-of-all-trades players. Not for sure that that's what they're going to do, but if we later found out that, yes, that's what Brett Veach and Steve Spagnuolo and Andy Reid want to do with this defense, I wouldn't be surprised one bit.
Yeah, versatility is a hallmark of Steve Spagnuolo's defenses. Being able to move guys around the formation, being able to give offenses different looks pre-snap, and be able to mold the look into something different after the snap. So I'm not surprised that they've targeted versatility. It is, though, interesting, and we talked about this earlier, these are both 1-year deals. So they don't feel like long-term, obviously they're not long-term commitments. So it's interesting that they are patching some holes, like starting caliber players on 1-year deals. An interesting way to go about trying to fortify the defense and continue to make a run at another championship next year in Kansas City.
Let's run through a couple more NFL signings today to round out our 580 Sports Talk headlines on this Feel Good Friday afternoon. We'll just go down the list here. Good day for your Seattle Seahawks, signing former New York Giant Julian Love, 2 years, $12 million. I love that deal. I thought he'd get maybe not twice that, but I thought he'd get plenty more than $12 million over 2 years. That's a good deal for the Seahawks.
I'll tell you, it'd be very interesting how their safety group looks next year. Quandre Diggs, one of the best deep safeties in the league, should have Jamal Adams back healthy for next season. He's kind of an all-over-the-field safety. Julian Love can be that as well. They can do a lot of fun 3 safety looks and packages with Adams and Love, I have a feeling. And that defense was short on playmakers and playmaking ability last year, and hopefully that addition of Julian Love helps in that department, and the return of Adams, of course.
We also know, speaking of our favorite teams, Tarvarius Moore, former safety of the San Francisco 49ers, he is now a Green Bay Packer, signing to a one-year deal. The Dallas Cowboys are bringing back their backup quarterback, Cooper Rush. Small dollar amount, just $6 million on a new contract. I thought he was going to get more than that. I thought some team was going to be dumb enough to offer him more to compete for a starting job after the Cowboys went, 4-1 with him as a starter this past year. I'm impressed. Thank you to NFL front offices for not being completely idiotic. I'm actually very impressed by that.
Yeah, there are a lot of quality backup quarterbacks. Maybe that's an oxymoron for some people, but guys that you don't feel like you're in bad hands with, who are getting some very reasonable deals. Gardner Minshew's another one going to Indianapolis. Lots of them are on much better contracts than the 2 years, $10 million, $5 million guaranteed that the Denver Broncos inexplicably gave Jarrett Stidham to kick off free agency. So, just in case you were worried that the Broncos had some more competent people in charge, I don't think you need to worry about that yet.
Also, just a couple other quick pieces of personnel notes. The Patriots have signed former Dolphins tight end Mike Gesicki. Bengals offensive tackle Jonah Williams, who had been their left tackle. Unsurprisingly, he has asked for a trade after they signed Orlando Brown. And additionally, Kevin Byard of the Tennessee Titans, who's been one of the best safeties in the NFL, reports coming out today that the Titans asked him to take a pay cut, and he told them no. So it is unknown if they're going to hold on to him or are going to cut him in the near future. Any other headlines for you?
Yeah, a couple of quick injury notes for the NCAA tournament. A couple of the best players on number 1 seeds dealing with injury. Houston star Marcus Sasser injured his groin in the AAC tournament. Tried to play through it in their game against Northern Kentucky last night. Re-aggravated it in the first half. Left the game, did not return, but Sasser told the media in Birmingham today that he is 100% playing tomorrow. Those are his words. Also saying that for the Houston Cougars was guard Jamal Shedd, who is dealing with a knee injury, hyperextended his knee in the win over the Norse last night. As for Alabama, their star Brandon Miller dealing with a groin injury. He was scoreless in Alabama's first-round win over Texas A&M Corpus Christi yesterday. Head coach Nate Oates said Miller would not participate in the live portion of practice Friday, but was hopeful that Miller would be able to play on Saturday against Maryland. There's not a ton of star power in this tournament as is, and it would be a real bummer if guys like Sasser and Miller were limited or absent entirely, because those are the guys that make some of the best teams in this tournament go.
Yeah, there is no doubt about that. We'll get some final thoughts on the first weekend of the NCAA tournament, a couple game picks, and a final word coming up right after this, right here on 580 Sports Talk.
Conclusion. You better wrap it up.
We are wrapping up this week of 580 Sports Talk with a quick final word as well as some quick game picks. Dan, let's get to them. K-State -7.5 taking on Montana State tonight. Let's start there first.
I think Kansas State wins, and I don't think they're going to have to sweat it. I don't necessarily think they're going to blow out Montana State necessarily, but I would be very surprised if this game were in any kind of doubt going into the under 4 TV timeout. I think Kansas State has better athletes. I think they'll find ways to score and make it Montana State's defense uncomfortable, have to guard a lot of the floor, and I think they'll take really good care of the ball. They will be locked in, they will play focused, they will play free, and they will win tonight.
Yeah, I got K-State at +8 or at -8.5. Excuse me. I still like that line. I do think K-State's going to win handily in this one. I think they'll pick up the win tomorrow. KU -3.5 against Arkansas with a trip to the Sweet 16 on the line.
Man, it is might be as hard a game as Kansas faces in the tournament. I think they'll find a way. I think this feels like a game where Jalen Wilson can drag them over the finish line, and where their three-point shooting, they shot it well, over 40% against Howard. If they can make another 7, 8, 9 threes, that can be the equalizer against a team that really doesn't like to shoot the three and doesn't shoot it particularly well. I think Kansas's ability to stretch the floor and shoot that three ball is going to be the equalizer against Arkansas's defense, and I think they win a tight one.
I'm going to go with KU. I would not touch the spread in this game. I do think KU will be able to come out on top. I think that toughness, I think the calmness, I think the been there before. Arkansas won plenty of games in the tournament the last couple of years too, but they've had a lot of different guys in there. The main core for this KU team is the same two guys that were huge pieces of last year's championship, plus McCullough's defense and tournament experience. I think KU wins. I think it'll be close, 1, maybe 2 possessions, but I'll take KU to at least get to the Sweet 16 and complete what has been a tremendous follow-up to their national championship a year. You can find them at the intersection of I-470 and Fairlawn back in the capital city. Buy local, buy Lewis, your hometown Toyota dealer. That's Lewis Toyota and the Lewis Toyota Road to a Championship. We will be back on Monday at our normal time, 3 o'clock, from the Huntoon Hill Studios back in the capital city. We'll be here tomorrow as well for KU versus Arkansas. We'll have full recaps on our YouTube and over on our website, 580wibw.com. But that is going to do it for us. We've got Westwood 1 NCAA tournament coverage coming up next. We'll have the K-State Radio Network later on tonight as they take on Montana State as well. So until next time, for Kyle Manthe, for Dan Lucero, I'm Brendan Brzezinski live from Des Moines saying so long. We'll see you on Monday right here on 580 Sports Talk.